Welcome back to the Let's Interrupt series, where we're talking about being interrupters. Interrupters of lies, interrupters of silence, and interrupters of isolation. Because exploitation grows quietly in those places where people aren't paying attention. To help us understand how we can better protect our community's most vulnerable, I've invited Erin Moody to the show today. As a representative of the Terrie Hess Child Advocacy Center, Erin is on the front lines of child advocacy. Erin, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And some of our guests might not be fully aware of what a child advocacy center is. So would you take a few minutes to just share with our audience a little bit about who Terrie Hess is, the Terrie Hess Child Advocacy Center, and the work that you do?
Absolutely. Historically speaking, I think child advocacy centers were kept more private just because child abuse, frankly, was kept very secret in the past. And so child advocacy centers are available. We are very rich with them in this area. So the Terrie Hess Child Advocacy Center is nationally accredited, and we serve Rowan County. We also serve surrounding counties in partnership with their child advocacy centers. If we have a conflict case, if they have a delay in their ability to schedule, or vice versa. So it's a very cooperative network. But primarily, we respond to allegations of child abuse. We are a tool used by law enforcement, the Department of Social Services, where they bring child abuse cases to have forensic interviews done. We have 3 certified forensic interviewers, as well as comprehensive medical exams, family advocacy, victim advocacy services, and then the important piece is also connecting to services that are going to continue on through that child and their non-offending family members' journeys of making meaning of negative experiences and figuring out where they want to go with that new experience. And so that's historically what we do, but my role as the prevention and education program manager is preventative education in the community. And we also brought a special guest today who's napping already on the rug, and that would be Murphy, the therapy dog. So over the years, we have expanded tremendously in Rowan County. We're very fortunate. And so we're able to offer animal-assisted therapy services to our clients. We offer trauma-based therapy services. We have several different modalities. All of our services are at no cost to the community, which is very important. We cannot have roadblocks to children receiving services for something this critical. We can bill insurance if a family has access to it, but even to the point of we do not charge co-pays even. And so my big piece, and what I can talk to you the most on, is how we educate youth and adults in our community to create a holistic community that really looks out for the welfare of kids and starts having those important conversations to avoid isolation and secrets around potential abusive situations.
Yeah, well, one of the things we talk about often in this series is how exploitation grows in isolation. When children feel alone, unsupported, or unseen. So from your perspective, working with children, why is connection and support so vitally important to protecting kids?
Well, we could probably have an entire day-long conversation on just that topic, but those feelings are naturally occurring, for one. Children are trying to discover who they are. They're trying to gain confidence. Even us adults struggle with feelings of isolation.
Yes, we do.
So that is already something that they are learning through, making meaning of, but also that is one of the greatest elements that is exploited by predators. Making children feel further isolated, making them feel that should they tell someone that someone's making them feel uncomfortable or doing something inappropriate, that they won't be believed, that the adult's word will be taken over theirs. And so those feelings are even further blown out of proportion by people who are very good at taking advantage of children. And so we combat that in multiple different ways. The way that I'm the most passionate about is through age-appropriate education with children, teaching them like rock-solid boundaries, emotional boundaries and physical boundaries.
Yeah.
We have amazing children, and they're so often in the face of trauma and abuse will still be concerned about having good manners.
Yeah.
We have amazing kids, and so really empowering them to understand that you don't owe good manners or good listening ears to adults that don't demonstrate healthy body boundaries.
Yeah.
Really empowering them that the word no is a superpower and you can use it with grown-ups.
Yeah.
You can use it with people in your household, with family members, if they are not demonstrating safe body
Right.
contact.
Right.
And for some of them, that's a new concept.
Yeah.
And so that's a big piece. But in reality, we don't want our kids to be responsible for knowing how to sound the alarm. In a perfect world, it would be amazing if all of the adults in our community could recognize the signs and symptoms of children who are experiencing trauma or abuse, of adults who are perpetrating and or grooming.
Yes.
Because oftentimes the early signs happen in public places with witnesses. And also just, what do we do about it? We do get involved. We do not prioritize family privacy over the safety of children. And so we teach, we educate on abuse prevention anywhere from 3 years old all the way up to end of life. We'll go anywhere in the community. Schools, we start, science shows us, education shows us that 3 years old for age appropriate beginning short lessons to learn about body boundaries. So we have a pilot program that we started with Partners in Learning. They helped us design it for their kids. It's been amazing. We'll go to schools, we'll go to summer camps, after school programs, youth groups, scout groups, really anything. If you're listening and you have access to a group of human beings who are interested in educating on keeping kids safe and having healthy and safe boundaries, I have an age-appropriate discussion that we can have, and I will come to you anytime. So that's just the biggest way that we're really working on isolation in our field.
Right.
And also just having the community understand who we are and what we do, and that we're available, because we don't want families going through those things secretively in private, thinking that no one will understand.
Right.
Because unfortunately, statistically speaking, 1 in 10 children will experience sexual abuse before their 18th birthdays.
Right.
That's not talking about the other types of abuse.
Right.
So we don't want children and families to feel like they're alone in what they're facing. There are people to help them, and we're available all the time.
Right. And that's what we found to be true in prevention work, is when young people feel like they have trusted adults in their life, strong relationships, and supportive environments, they're less likely to become vulnerable to exploitation later.
Absolutely.
But it starts very young, and it starts having those conversations, not just once, but multiple conversations as they grow. So, Erin, at Project Light, we talk a lot about building protective factors. Any type of abuse or exploitation, it's a cycle. And so we want to be interrupters of that cycle. So to get to them before the exploitation happens, it takes building those protective factors and addressing those vulnerabilities. So helping young people understand their value, how to develop healthy relationships, and knowing even where to turn when they do need help. So from your experience, what are some of the things that help kids grow into safe, supported, and confident adults?
I think the biggest conversation we are facing as a society is going from not discussing child abuse because we don't want to scare our children, to the understanding that these dangers exist. They have a higher likelihood of facing some type of trauma than maybe we would like to admit for our own kids. And so if we begin age-appropriate, constructive, educational conversations with children, much like practicing for a fire drill, we are giving them the tools that they need to not be vulnerable, to not be isolated, even down to the point of Having conversations, I start in first grade with children about what is the difference between a grown-up, which some children think all grown-ups, they will help me, they will protect me, but unfortunately we know that's not true. What is the difference between a grown-up and a safe adult? What do safe adults demonstrate for us through their behavior that we can learn to trust and go to them if we have questions, if we want to talk about something? Because a lot of times before people will realize that they're being abused, what they can identify before they're even aware of abuse is that they're uncomfortable. And so if we can really empower our kids to recognize when they're uncomfortable, when someone is making them feel uncomfortable, and feel confident in going to have that discussion with a safe adult, safe adults will take the time to listen.
Yeah.
They will believe us, and they will help us. And also understanding if you go to someone that you thought was a safe adult and they don't listen, or they don't believe you, or their guidance is maybe even just due to no fault of their own. Maybe they haven't been exposed to the education. Their guidance is, well, don't talk about that with anyone else and just try and avoid that person. We can do so much better for our kids.
Right.
So we start young, but having age-appropriate, constructive conversations to give them the understanding that potential dangers could exist. And this is what we do if we experience that or witness it happening to someone else. And that is, we put the responsibility on a safe adult to help us, but we have to make sure they're aware that something bad is happening.
Right.
They always giggle when I tell them, did you know that grown-ups are not magic and they cannot read our minds? And they'll giggle forever. The old saying of your mom might tell you she has eyes in the back of her head, but she actually doesn't. And so sometimes you have to let her know if something inappropriate is going on. And so that's the best way that I've done. And I'd say same goes for adults in our community.
Yeah.
Having honest conversations and empowering them to know what you specifically can do.
Right.
I think most people we meet, when they hear any kind of advocate, when they hear what type of work you do, they'll have a personal story.
Right.
I used to have a child in my neighborhood that I was so worried about. And because of, inaccurate messaging on a social level, they'll think, well, I never had any proof that anything bad was happening. When in reality, as citizens, it is our job to notify the authorities of a potential danger, and that is then their professional jobs. They are trained to look for the proof, to find the evidence.
It's not our job.
It's not our job. And well-intentioned, caring, kind people will think, I used to be so worried, but I didn't have any proof, so I never said anything. And that's a very common misconception.
Right.
So just really starting those slightly, in the beginning, uncomfortable conversations.
Right.
But really, if safety is our priority as a society, we shouldn't be uncomfortable about talking about things that are happening, that are absolutely present in our community, and making sure that we're prepared and that we have a game plan as a culture, as a society, as a family, as an auntie or an uncle, as a grandparent, as a mom or a dad, a teacher, a mentor. What's our plan? How are we going to be proactive?
That's so right. It starts with laying that foundation.
Yes, we have to get comfortable with the conversation if we're going to know what to do when times of adversity may show up unexpectedly.
Right. And we can't prioritize our comfort over our kids' safety.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And so if you see something, say something.
You just captured the slogan.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a very common one.
You don't have to prove anything. And we talk about that if you suspect somebody's being trafficked, that you don't have to prove anything. You just have to have a concern. But if you don't know what you're looking for, then it might be happening right under your nose.
That's exactly right.
Education is incredibly powerful.
It's our greatest tool, frankly.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Erin, the work is too big for just one organization to do alone. And so one of the things I absolutely appreciate about our partnership is that we're working toward the same goal.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we try to do so much in isolation that it leaves huge gaps. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we can just come together, we can fill those gaps. So from your perspective, why are partnerships between organizations so important when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable in our communities.
I think to be a productive and informed advocate of protection of any age person, you need to be aware of every potential resource, because resources are how we build people back up after experiences and how we help them get on track for things that they want out of their lives. And so it's important for us to recognize we are very rich in this area of helping agencies, of programs designed to help people have their basic needs met. And so if we are not aware of what those are, then the likelihood of recreating the wheel, as I like to call it, exists.
Right.
And we also live in a very, in an area where a lot of people care about their neighbors and will fundraise and be charitable giving towards organizations that are doing wonderful work. I think also as nonprofits in this area, it is our responsibility to be good stewards of grant funding and donations and fundraising to make sure that we are using each penny to the very best of our ability to serve people in our community.
Yes.
And so if we're working together, then I know that I don't have to be an expert on trafficking because I have a resource for it. Obviously, our jobs overlap often, but it's the same if we're discussing a family with food insecurity. We know how to help them through county social services apply for benefits. We know how to get them connected to food bank services through Rowan Helping Ministries.
Yes.
Oftentimes people might say something, call and think, do you have a pantry? Do you run a food bank there? And we don't, but I can tell you the one in town that you can support. Because I think if we're all very intentional about how we use funding to help people, then we will not have duplicative needs. And so that, in my mind, as a professional, is really important.
Absolutely.
But also just if we're working together, people are going to have their needs met more, like in a more timely fashion.
Right.
They're going to be, services are going to be more complete if we're working together. Yes. No one agency can meet every need.
Absolutely not.
And if you try, you're not going to be successful because it's impossible. And so you have to work collaboratively, putting the client or the individual at the center because they need the holistic package. And so if we can all fill the gaps around them, that's how we really support people.
That's how we become interrupters of the cycle. Vulnerabilities are often very complex.
Yes.
They're multi-layered. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial instability, addictions, all of those things lead to vulnerabilities for trafficking, for child abuse, for a variety of things. And so we need to, there's exponential impact that happens when we work collaboratively.
And we can interrupt generational cycles as well. So not only is one individual's trauma very complex, but the generational repercussions of trauma can go on forever sometimes if they don't get support. And so that's where it's really all the agency's job to work collaboratively to do the very best we can for our clients.
Well, I'm super thankful for the partnership that we're forming and excited to see how that will continue to grow and build in the months and the years ahead. Well, as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with 3 important reminders. First, children are safest when they are connected with caring, trusted adults. Second, building protective factors early help prevent vulnerability later in life. And third, communities protect children best when organizations work together. And so, Erin, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this Let's Interrupt series that we've been doing. And I'm looking forward to having you back again.
Anytime. Thank you.
Murphy, thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here.
Good morning, Murphy. You had a lot to say.
So as we close out this series, I just want to share exploitation thrives in lies, silence, and isolation. But when communities come together to support children, strengthen families, and work in partnership, the cycle can be interrupted. That's what it means to be interrupters. Thank you, Erin, for the work that you and your team do every day to protect children and families. And thank you for joining us throughout this series. So let's continue to be interrupters.